Strategic Framework Agreement. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions.
Right. Yes, please. Thank you. I want to start with, I'm sure what a lot of people are going to have questions about. I'm sure you're probably not going to have too many answers, but let's try anyway. On this impending announcement regarding Jerusalem, whether it is the status of the city itself or the disposition of the embassy, either way, from what you have seen, what Secretary Tillerson has heard in Europe, the reports of the phone calls that the president has had, is there any world leader who has come out in support of the U.S. making a unilateral, taking a unilateral step with regards to the city?
Matt, as you know, I'm not going to get ahead of the president on any of this. I know a lot of you have questions about the status there. I don't want to speculate on what the president's announcement will be and don't want to get ahead of the president. The issue rests with the president. The president will address all of this when he is ready. I can tell you that some calls have certainly occurred, as you well know, between the U.S. government, including Secretary Tillerson, including the president and also the vice president, but I'm just not going to be able to characterize what has come out of those conversations. I know that's not very satisfactory, but I'm just not going to go there.
Well, I'm not asking what the decision is. I'm just wondering if you can say that he's gotten the support of anyone for any decision that he might make.
So again, I'm not going to characterize those conversations and some of those calls. I can tell you that the conversations, both in person and over the phone, at least on the secretary's part, have been a frank exchange of ideas. That's it. I'm going to leave it at that. The president will speak when he's ready to.
All right. Moving out of the realm of the hypothetical.
Okay.
Last week, cables went out from the department to embassies abroad, warning them about the possibility of violence, of protests in anticipation of this announcement. Today, already, the Consulate General in Jerusalem has put out a security message. These are not in the realm of the hypothetical. These are things that are actually happening. How concerned are you that what happens tomorrow could pose a significant security risk for U.S. embassies, official Americans, as well as private Americans?
What I can tell you is that we're watching the situation very closely. There have obviously been scores and scores of media reports over the past few days that have discussed concerns about the security situation. Because of that, we continue to watch the security situation there. We have put out information to not only our personnel, but also the American public through some of our embassy websites, as we would with a lot of other matters. I just want to be clear that we take the situation seriously and we're closely watching it, as we often and very frequently say to you, the safety and security, not only of U.S. personnel, but American citizens at home and abroad is the top issue here.
Are you saying that these warnings have been put out in response to to media news reports about what might be happening tomorrow?
Well, this has been so broadly reported. We are not, as a government, going to speculate about the president's decision. Many in the media have speculated about the president's decision.
So you're suggesting that it's the reports that are causing this anxiety and this fear of unrest?
The U.S. government at this point has not formally announced its decision. So I'm not going to get ahead of that, but we keep an eye closely on the security situation, as we always do. Andrea,
at the same time, after the president made several calls, or has been making several calls and talking to leaders and met with the king last week, statements have come from King Abdullah, from Erdogan and others today, and Federica Mogherini spoke to the Secretary of State's face today about not doing anything that would undermine peace in the region. How does the Secretary and how does the State Department feel about concerns, global concerns, that U.S. policy is about to undermine peace in the region?
well, that would be assuming the president's decision, and I'm just not going to assume the president's decision
Why
at
would
this
the
point.
Jerusalem consulate, to follow up on Matt, why would they issue this warning? Not to travel to the West Bank, not to hold meetings in the Old City, not to go to Bethlehem?
Because we know what has been reported. We know what's out there in the public sphere, that there are some concerns about a decision that will be made by the White House. I'm not saying what that decision is. It is not my place or my role to say that. Hold on, let me finish. We will always keep the safety and security of Americans paramount. We often put out these kinds of messages to U.S. citizens all around the world, sometimes the messages are often different based on what's going on in any particular region. So we want to be able to keep the American public up to speed, share with them our concerns about any announcements that could be made. And this is also a good reminder, as I will say anywhere in the world, to sign up for the State Department STEP program. Again, I always say that this is not anything that is just for the president's decision when that is made, but we always encourage Americans to do that. That way, we can always get in touch with you if we need to.
Is the Secretary of State on board with this? Whatever it is the Secretary of State of the United States of America on board with a decision that could be putting U.S. citizens and troops at risk in the region?
I think the Secretary has communicated clearly, as have all the members of the interagency who have a role in making this decision or being a part of the decision. He's made his positions clear to the White House. I think the Department of Defense has as well. But it's ultimately the president's decision to make. He is in charge. Okay? Hi, Said.
Quickly follow up on a couple of things. If and when this happens, the move of the embassy, if it happens, technically, what is the role of the State Department in this case? What do you do?
Say that. You know what I'm going to say to that one. It's simply a hypothetical. We're not there yet.
But
we're not there yet.
What are the machinations for the? How do you do it?
I don't have an answer for you because we are not there just yet.
All right. Let me ask you about something else. Are you aware of the letter of assurances that Secretary of State James Baker gave to the Palestinians back in 1991?
No, I don't have that information. I think it was in
it's
college
a letter
then.
of assurances that it says they that yeah, I mean,
right.
But it is still a letter of assurances by the government of the United States and the then Secretary of State James Baker, in which he says on the issue of Jerusalem that we do not recognize Israel's annexation of East Jerusalem or the extension of its municipal boundaries, and we encourage all sides to avoid unilateral actions and so on. Are you breaking your own word in this case? I mean, isn't that a word that
I
the
can't
United
speak
States-
back to 1991
But that-
and Mr. Baker's comments or pledge at the time.
Are you suggesting that the U.S. government changes its position from one administration to the other?
I can say that the president is going to make a decision, or the president will make his announcement when he is ready.
But you certainly agree that the United States must
I'm not
adhere to
agreeing.
its-
I'm not agreeing with anything. I'm saying I'm not going to get ahead of the president.
Okay, I mean, let me ask you about something else. I mean, you want to reach a peaceful settlement with the Palestinians. Today, I think either the House voted or it is voting on Taylor Force, for instance, to cut off aid for the Palestinians. I mean, should this go on, this beating up on the Palestinians that are probably one of the most hapless communities on earth under occupation for 100 years?
Yeah.
Do you think that the position of the United States ought to be on the side of those who are being brutalized by occupation?
Said, I'm just not familiar with the congressional legislation that you're mentioning right now, so I'm not going to comment on that, as we typically don't comment on things coming out of Congress. I can tell you that there will be a backgrounder call. I believe it is being put together by the White House. It should take place later today, and so perhaps some of your questions will be answered on that one.
And finally, I just want to follow up on Andrea's question. Is the Secretary on board on this? Has he consulted with the President in any way, let's say in the last 24 hours and so on?
I don't know if the Secretary has spoken with the President within the past 24 hours, but I can tell you that the Secretary and the State Department have sent in a lot of information to the White House. The Secretary, as you well know, has had a lot of bilateral meetings recently, including some of those face-to-face in Europe right now. He's had a lot of calls over the past few days and some meetings in person here in Washington last week. So whatever he learns out of those meetings, calls, and conversations, he certainly passes that off to the White House, and the President can make his decision. I imagine that the Department of Defense has done the same thing. Okay? Shall we move on? Okay. Okay. Hi.
Technicalities. The waiver wasn't signed as on the due date last night. What is the status of it now before?
I'm not going to confirm that. That's all in the hands of the White House, because that's something that the President would be handling. Okay? Let's move on.
Are you sending anyone to the PLO Bethlehem Christmas party tomorrow on Capitol Hill?
I'm not aware of that.
I think the State Department was invited. So
I
maybe you
don't
should
know.
look
I
into
had not heard of it. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Actually, speaking about that party, is it your understanding that a holiday party would be among the things permitted for the PLO office to do after you closed it and then didn't close it?
Well, to my understanding, it never fully closed or
Right,
anything of
but-
the sort.
but-
They're still actively engaged, and we have asked that they stay engaged in the peace process. Now, perhaps, and now I will get into a hypothetical, if our Palestinian friends want to open up the office and invite Christians and invite the Israelis, then perhaps, why not have a party?
That's okay. All right, so if they have a sign that says like peace on earth, that's
Peace on,
okay.
perhaps
That
it
means
is,
that
yes,
means
yes.
that
And I
it's
say that
okay.
in a teasing fashion.